You're listening to the Lux Life Discovered podcast, where we talk with people who are living a lifestyle that reflects their passion, because we believe everyone should be living their best life, their Lux Life. The show is hosted by Rick Steiner with Steiner Event Group, a premier national event planning company. If you are watching on YouTube, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell to get notifications of future episodes. The show is produced by 30A Media and is broadcast on your favorite podcast outlets, as well as YouTube, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TVs, and other major brand smart TVs.
Hello and welcome to Lux Life Discovered. I'm Rick Steiner, and our guest today is Rafe Carlson, who is a up-and-coming musician and artist. And so, Rafe, it's great to have you with us.
Thanks so much for having me out. I'm excited for it.
Good. I've been listening to some of your music lately, and so kind of tell me how do you describe your music? Because I was thinking country initially, but there's more. It's not just country, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people. The first stuff I started putting out in Nashville, I hadn't really found my artistry yet, and I hadn't found my sound yet. So it sounded a lot like the stuff on the radio, which is good, and that was a good way to kind of get my feet wet, I guess. But we're kind of calling it Great Lakes country. And it's,
okay.
It's like Southern rock, but current and mainstream and kind of radio. And we just trying to, we found a gap, I think, that's not really been fit by anyone in the past, 10, 20 years. There's a lot of guys and gals doing the more folky, indie, raw thing, like kind of in the Zach Bryan camp. And then there's the real radio, pop country stuff. And so we're really going for that kind of Skynyrd, ZZ Top, CCR, meets modern country kind of sound.
All right, that's a good way to describe it, because that's what I was thinking. It's more kind of like a rock, but it's still the country. So yeah, that makes sense. So yeah. So where did your love of music come from?
Well, I grew up. My mom was in bands her whole young life, back before I was born. But I grew up listening to her sing. And my two older cousins, I grew up watching them play guitar. And so now they play guitar for me, and they come on tour, and we tour together. So it's kind of a cool, full circle thing. I mean, I was like 10 years old watching them play. Got my first guitar when I was probably 13. And now we just got off a 6-day run last week all over Minnesota, Wisconsin, and about to do it all again this weekend. So it's pretty fast paced in the summertime. But yeah, as far as inspiration, man, it's a family thing. I've got a really musical family. Both sides of my family really musical. And so I just had that my whole upbringing, just watching my cousins, watching my aunts and uncles, my mom, not so much my dad. I got my work ethic from my dad.
That's great. Poor dad didn't have any music ability, huh? No.
Well, he's got other things going on.
That's right. No. Well, that's great. So when did you start writing music? Can you write a lot of your own music?
Yeah, I write, everything I've cut so far and everything I'm planning to put out, I've written. And when we go on the road and we tour with the band, we're doing probably 80-90% originals. And we kind of test it out by playing the same song enough times for the fans to start singing along. And when we watch in the front row, if everybody's singing along to a song that we haven't put out yet, that's how we know it's one that we're going to release. And so that's what we did with the last one. But I started writing music not too long ago, probably 2021. And that was the kind of thing for me that was, left brain, right brain, kind of had to learn how to do it. I've got so many super talented friends, really creative artist friends. And they were like, man, I love the creation process. I love writing music, but I hate the business part of things. I hate, being on the road and touring, and I don't like booking, and I don't like doing all the independent artist stuff. And I'm like, man, I love that stuff. I'm fine with doing that stuff. That comes easy to me, but I'm, it's a different side of the brain to write songs. So I had to kind of learn that. It wasn't an innate thing for me to be able to write music.
And then being able to learn to balance all of it.
Oh yeah. It's just, it's stupid. I mean, it's just every artist kind of has a pie. I like to look at it that way, and you kind of have to focus on some people's slices are bigger than others. And mine, has been touring and performing, and writing is something that I learn something new every day. I try to write a song every day. It's a little harder when you're on the road, but try to.
But again, being on the road gives you experiences to draw from, I would think.
That's right. Well, you could fall in the trap too of writing too many songs about being on the road, and then the fans can't really resonate with that.
That's true.
And I was doing that for a while, just writing songs about playing. It's like, man, nobody gets what I'm talking about here. So
what appeals to you the most in writing? Like, is there a certain topic, certain message, or
I've always been a melody guy. I grew up listening to like Dan Fogelberg and John Denver, these really prolific artists that really mastered writing vocal melodies and these interesting chord changes. And so for me, I was never really good at the poetry side of things, like the kind of Zach Bryan, Tyler Childers, like you've seen these guys come up, they're really amazing poets. That was the thing I had to spend some time with and learn and try to get good at. But for me, the melody writing was always something I was pretty good at, and that was kind of my strong suit. So when I sit down and a co-write, if I'm with two or three other folks, and I'm usually the guy that's coming up with the melody, with how it sounds, with the chord progression, the guitar lick, that kind of thing.
So when you're writing with other people, what's the biggest challenge in that? Because I mean, it's because if you get so many talented people together, everybody's got their strengths. Does it overlap? Does it compete with one another? That's
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is just finding the people to write with that you click with
right.
in general. Because if you sit down in a room where you're with people that I've had arguments, and I've had spats over this lyric or that lyric with really good friends of mine too. And you can be really good friends with someone and write terrible songs, and you can not like to hang out with someone and write amazing songs. So it's just a matter of how you click in the room. So I think the biggest challenge is just getting that right group in the room, to begin with.
And when it happens, it automatically. I'm sure it's like, dang, that was great. Yeah.
I find myself always going back to the same few guys and few girls, just because I love variety and I love new perspectives. But if it's like, hey, I've got a free morning on my calendar and I'm on the road and I want to jump on Zoom and write a song, I'm going to call my buddy that I've written 40 songs with, because I know it's going to be great, instead of trying to, figure out, hey, maybe this person wants to. And then it tends to be when you're first write with someone, somebody's going to flake, you're going to have to reschedule. And really in Nashville, it's just about finding someone that doesn't flake and cancel every single time. That's the challenge.
Okay. Because you were in Nashville for how long? You were there for a few years. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I spend the winters down there.
Okay. Yeah.
And I write and record, and then I'd get out as soon as it starts getting too hot, and I try to get on the road and tour. And I love Nashville, but I love the Midwest. I love Minnesota and Wisconsin too much to spend my summers down there. I'm not going to do that.
Well, come down to Florida. It's a little cool and breezy here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not too bad, man. Florida's great, man. I haven't been down there a couple of years. I used to go down there every year to the Gulf side, Treasure Island, St. Petersburg.
Okay, yeah. Well, we record in Santa Rosa, just west of Rosemary Beach and Alice Beach, in that area. So yeah. But in Nashville, you're talking about the writers flaking. So because I guess that's also a big thing too, with so many writers in Nashville. Because I mean, everybody goes to Nashville to be a songwriter or an artist, but finding the ones that are serious. So you have that issue too in that area.
Yeah, I mean, I came from a sales background and a business background, and so when I there's so many really talented artists in Nashville. What I found is the tricky thing is to find people that can keep an appointment. Yeah. I came from a background where you're not late, you keep your appointments, you don't flake, and the artsy people tend to have trouble with that. And so I've really done my best work with the people that are also kind of like-minded in that sense, in a business sense,
Right. Yeah, the creative people tend to work on their own time frame, and their time is also different than normal time sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've been there too, and I think there's kind of an ebb and flow to I've been in really creative modes, and then I've been in modes where I just want to be on the road and touring and performing, and I can't write a song to save my life. And I think it's kind of like a pendulum. You can't be everything at once, and you kind of have to spend a good chunk of time in one mode and a good chunk of time in the next mode when you can.
So how many songs have you written, would you say?
Oh man, probably close to 200, but only a few good ones, only a few really good ones. And
Well,
I'm
that's
the type of guy, you know, my older cousins, when I first started learning about songwriting, they're like, you got to fill 5 notebooks full of songs, and you got to write hundreds of songs before we start writing good ones. And I'm like, I got to perfect it and I got to finish it and make it a good one. So I tend to write less songs, but I just really dial it in until it's something I'm happy with.
right. So you're a perfectionist then.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Yeah,
Yeah, with some things for sure.
right. Well, good deal. So, tell me about your plans for the summer. I know you say you just got off tour. You've got another tour scheduled. Who do you open for? Like who all or were you working with this summer? Because you've been with
Yeah.
some big
So
names.
yeah, this last weekend we were with Shenandoah. And on Saturday we played Porterfield Country Fest, which that was kind of a pinch me moment because we were backstage. They had a green room in a trailer, and they had all these pictures of all the artists that have played there on the walls of the trailer, and they were all autographed. And I spent probably 5-10 minutes trying to think of some country artist that wasn't on that wall, and I couldn't. It was
Oh, really?
everybody. I mean, they've been going on for 45, 50 years at festivals. So that was a cool one. That was probably the biggest permanent like wood stage that I've ever played. It looked like Woodstock '69. I mean, it was just this massive wooden stage with the festival logo at the top. It was just pretty cool. But yeah, we got some dates coming up with Brantley Gilbert, Dustin Lynch, Confederate Railroad, Rodney Atkins, Lanco, um, Justin Moore, Joe Nichols. We got a lot between now and September.
Wow, that's exciting. And is it all in the Midwest or all over the country?
It's all in the Midwest, and
Okay.
I prefer it that way for now. I got friends that try to do the national tour thing, and I'm like, man, I'd rather play for a couple hundred of my fans in Minnesota, and Wisconsin, and Iowa, and Michigan than play in a dive bar in Louisiana for 5 people. You know, it's just
Right.
at a certain point it makes sense. I'm at a point where I'm growing a grassroots following, and we like playing for fans. So we don't really get outside the 5 state region a whole lot. But next year we're looking at something a little more national and just gradually growing that way.
Right. Well, good, good. So how did your band come together? You said your cousins are in your two of your cousins are in your band. So how did your
Yeah,
band
I called my cousin, my lead guitar player is my cousin Steven. Um, and my rhythm guitar player is my cousin Dave. And I grew up watching them play in a rock band when I was probably, 9, 10, 11 years old up where I live in Duluth, Minnesota. And it was getting to that point. I'd play so many solo shows and so many bars and fairs and that kind of thing. And I had this sound where I had to use a stomp box, which I don't know if you've seen one of those. It's just like a little wooden wedge and you hit it and it
right,
makes a kick drum sound. And so I'm hitting this thing with my foot. I'm playing guitar really rhythmically and playing little fills in between chords. And I'm singing, and I'm kind of almost like trying to sing the backup vocal parts in songs and just doing so much. And my producer in Nashville was like, "Man, you got to get a band. I mean, you're trying to make a sound that is hard to do with just as a solo act, you know." And so I called my cousins and I was like, "You guys want to do this thing? I've got a good enough following now where we could make it, pretty big." And we found this amazing drummer. I went to one of their shows in downtown Duluth, and him with his old band, and he played loud and hard. And I said, "You're going to fit right in." So we grabbed him, and we grabbed a bass player, and we started playing. Got really tight, and the shows started coming in, and the big festivals, and we just basically come to town to kick butt every time and play loud. And I think, my philosophy on that is it's a lot of it's in the presentation, in my opinion, because you have all these bands nowadays. They play, they play to a click. They've got their in-ears. They've got their little amp that's mic'd and it's all run into the mixer. And it's a very consistent sound. And these bands that are playing 200 shows a year all over the country, they have to have that consistency. And I totally understand that. But at the level that we're at, it's more about building a brand. And we're kind of our energy and our brand as a band is just the band that comes into town to kick butt. We play loud. We don't ask questions. We just make it happen. And we try not to cause any hearing damage, but we try to be right on that line. And so I think that's kind of the thing that's missing nowadays. People are like afraid to like, ooh, I kind of like this, but this isn't what I'm supposed to like.
Right.
This is loud rock and roll. It's like when Elvis came on the scene, all the girls were like, ooh, is this bad? I like this guy. So
Right.
we come to town.
Am I wrong to like
You
this?
know,
Yeah.
nobody's doing like the really rocking, in your face kind of thing. I think that I think the raw folky indie thing is really cool. But it leaves this gap where Skynyrd used to be. It leaves this gap where ZZ Top or AC/DC or Hank Jr. or
Right.
David Allan Coe, nobody's doing that thing anymore. So we're trying to fit that thing. So we play loud and we have a whole lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, from your videos I watched, and I could tell where your one cousin with the long hair, how he used to be in a
Yeah.
rock band. That makes sense. So yeah,
Oh
because
yeah.
he jams pretty seriously. So yeah.
Well, and I have to have I have a video and audio crew that comes out with us, and we have to have them grab their audio from the other side of the stage as him because he's got a Fender 69 Super Reverb that's louder than the whole speaker system at most of the festivals. So yeah, if we grabbed audio from the front of the stage, it would just be, you couldn't even hear my vocal. It'd just be
Wow.
electric guitar.
So what's
It's
your
fun. We have a lot of fun.
well? It shows, and your passion is obvious. I mean, in your videos and stuff. So your song "Big City Lights." Tell me
Yeah.
about how that evolved and what the response has been to that.
Yeah, that came together. I was living in Nashville, and I don't know if country boy is the right word, but I grew up in a small town, hunting and fishing. We're right at the very north edge of Duluth, and north of Duluth in Minnesota. I don't know if you know your Minnesota geography, but there's not much. I mean, man, you're talking Canada, at that point.
Right.
Lakes and woods. And it's not like lakes in Wisconsin and Michigan where it's cabins all the way around. It's like lakes that you have to basically fly into on a float plane because there's no way to get to this stuff. So it's just wilderness. And I grew up fishing and hunting and taking the back roads in places like that. And when I moved to Nashville, surrounded by skyscrapers and concrete and buildings and stuff. I know a lot of people, Nashville is a small town, but for me, it was quite a culture shock. And so a lot of the songs I was writing were kind of like that, not dissing the big city, but just kind of like, man, this isn't really what it's all about for me. I kind of miss being home, being in the woods. And so Big City Lights manifested as a song to a girl that you used to, be with back in the day. And she moved off, she ran off to the big city and she found her a new man. You're back in the small town, open invitation to if she ever wants to come back around, you kind of think she might just because you know her a little too well. And she's out with some big city boy and driving around a fancy car. And,
Right.
it's kind of like an open invitation to come on back to the woods. And I look back on that song, it's like I was kind of writing that song to myself a little bit, because I was missing home and I was missing the woods. But it came together. I wrote that all by myself on the front porch of my house I was living in Creve Hall, just about 10-15 minutes south of downtown Nashville. And it was kind of just a stream of consciousness sort of song. I wrote it in probably 20 minutes, half hour maybe.
Wow.
It just came together. And the interesting thing with that one was when I finished it, I was like, well, I'm never going to put this one out. And it's always the ones you think that aren't going to do that well that do well. And that was, the response from that one. I started playing it acoustically at shows and people just loved it. And so I said, well, why don't we record it and see what happens? And so my buddy had a shed studio out in Hendersonville. And I had recorded all of my stuff at the soundstage with
Right.
the killer band. I mean, these Nashville musicians that play on all the big stuff like Evan Hutchins and John Conley and these, these amazing players, just a really tight sound with my, Jeff Huskins, amazing producer. We're mixing, mastering it at BMG, one of the biggest record labels in town. And I was like, that's a great sound. And I love that sound. But I want to do it a little different with this song. I want to, so I recorded in a shed. And, I was running low on cash because I've been living in Nashville for a while. I hadn't played a whole lot of shows. And so I did it on a shoestring budget and got it back to my producer and got it out by Memorial Day weekend. And it was kind of the sound I've been going for a long time. It was a little more raw and rock, and the response has been great. So we're really happy with it. We got standing ovation at Porterfield Country Fest and opening for Shenandoah, and the shows we played last weekend when we played the song. So I think it's our biggest song so far with our fans up in the Midwest for sure.
But it took all those hundreds of songs before that for you to be able to do that and just do it with ease. And even though you thought it was not going to be a big hit, look at it.
Man, and I think there's a balance. I always say, like, trying to walk that line, trying to keep it between real and radio. That's kind of really what it is in Nashville. It's like you gotta, a lot of it can seem very corporate. Yeah, the songwriting, the creative process can seem very predestined, predetermined, kind of within a box. And new people and new perspectives come to town, and they bring new ideas. And writing a great radio country song is a lot of using the same old stuff that works, paired with these new perspectives and these new ideas from people coming into town. And I was just writing so many songs with other people and co-writing every day. And that was one of the only songs over the span of a few months I wrote just all on my own. So I didn't think it would go anywhere, but it was just, like I said, a stream of consciousness sort of song. Really not trying to fit any format, not trying to be the Nashville radio thing.
Right.
And somehow it worked. So I don't know, maybe I'll try to replicate it if I can.
And it's great that the song about home, you had to be in Nashville to realize.
Yeah. It's funny. Yeah, it's always, grass is always greener on the other side, and you don't know what you got until you're missing it,
Well, Nashville, of course, you're young, but for me, I mean, it's changed so much over the years and still growing constantly. It's like, I'm sure you don't miss the traffic when you're at home.
It's terrible. It's even exploded since I started going down there. It's gotten busier. There's new skyscrapers and buildings going up every time I go to town.
I drove through there coming down here last week, and it's amazing how many cranes you see, because that's more of the skyline in Nashville, is all the cranes with the big buildings going up. So, So what, if something could develop in the next 6 months for you, ideally, what would it be? If you could make that happen?
That's a good question. And I think I focused so much on songwriting the past couple of years. I'd like some kind of system where I could consistently write music on the road and not have to worry about trying to set up these co-writes while I'm also touring.
Right.
And so maybe that manifests as some kind of publishing deal or something in Nashville. I've got some great relationships downtown and on Music Row with people I trust. Yeah. And I think something's going to happen pretty soon. But it would have to fit kind of, an artist development plan too. And I want to wind up with a company and with people that believe in my artistry, so that they'll be more flexible with my scheduling. But yeah, just trying to get these co-writes and trying to sharpen the saw and keep fresh songwriting wise while you're also touring and on the road is trickier than it might sound. But just next 6 months, probably finding a way to streamline the process of scheduling and having things set up so I can just jump on co-writes and not have to spend the extra time worrying about booking and planning and scheduling all this stuff while I'm touring.
Well, that's a big balance, because the time involved in writing, it can take away from your focus on performing. You know what I'm saying? So it's really good that you can balance that part of it, because I don't think everybody can. They're good at writing or good at performing, but not both. So
yeah. Well, and I watch these concerts, and I try to go to as many concerts as I can. And there's this kind of I guess I don't know this kind of really relaxed, nonchalant energy to these big artists when they're on stage. They're just up there having a good time. They're dancing around. They're smiling, and I see that, and I'm like, man, that's great. I've got to worry about, if my merch guy is, not half drunk over there and he's actually doing his job. I got to worry about if my appointment after this didn't cancel. I got to worry. When you're doing everything, you lose a little bit of that artistry. You become less relatable because you're just working so hard. I have a tough time talking to people because they'll be in conversation with me and they can tell my mind's in 100 different places. And so to alleviate some of that, to build some systems around yourself, to have a team around yourself so you can be more of an artist and you can be more present with your fans and present on stage. I hope that's the next step for me because I've already got a lot of gray hairs on both sides and they're coming in on the top here. And man, I love it and I love being totally locked in all the time. But I'm probably not as good of a conversationalist as I was a couple of years ago because I'm just
had too much going on. And it's hard to release some of that because you, being a perfectionist, because you can tell that you are, it's hard to let part of that go because you expect people to be as passionate and perfectionist as you are, and that's not always the case. And they're not going to do it as good as you would do it.
Yeah, and part of that's probably just me being a control freak, and which is,
well, hey, we're all there at some point, yeah.
But no, it's about finding people you trust that you can outsource things to, and I've got a good little team around me of people that I take on the road, and we do pretty well. But yeah, just finding things where I haven't allocated a whole lot of my time and energy to, like social media and these things. Seems like every meeting I have, oh, we love your shows, we love your music, we love your stage presence, we love your touring, we love who you've opened for, we love your this and that and the other thing. You just don't have the numbers, you just don't have the metrics. So if I could have a team doing that, I mean, I have so many friends that get a record deal, they just write songs in their bedroom and make beats on their computer and they've never even played a show, and boom, they get signed. It's like we're in the digital age, and I'm having trouble keeping up with it. But that's something I would outsource that if I just have social media people. I'm trying to do it on my own, but that's no fun.
Don't worry about the numbers per se, because the right music is going to get your interest. And we could go on forever on my view on that, but I'll keep that to myself. But yeah.
I try to keep it to myself too. I try not to complain too much.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
We'll talk more about that another time. But yeah. So man, thank you so much for being with us today. This has been a fast 30 minutes for sure. But tell people how to reach out to you and where they can find more about your touring schedule.
Yeah, Instagram's probably the best right now. We're posting, I post on there every hour or so, just updates. I'll throw this up on there. So yeah, Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, Apple Music, TikTok. We're out there everywhere. Music's out on everything. And rafecarlson.com/tour is the most up-to-date spot for tour dates. But we post those on Instagram and everything too.
Okay, great. Yeah, you put some good stories on your Instagram as well. So that's good.
I try to keep it real. I try not to do the, hi, everybody.
I'm going to hop on for a moment. Yeah.
I try to just, be kind of goofy and real. I think that's something people are missing these days. So I try to give them a little bit of that.
That's true. Well, Rafe, thank you so much for being with me today. I appreciate it. It's been great talking to you. I've been looking forward to this. So yeah.
It's been a lot of fun, Rick. Thank you for having me on. I hope we can meet up sometime or do something again in the near future.
All right. That sounds great. Well, that wraps up our episode of Lux Life Discovered. Thanks for joining us today, and we will see you next time on Lux Life Discovered.
Check out Lux Life Discovered on Facebook and Instagram and on 30a.tv. See you next time on Lux Life Discovered.